like me, sitting on the fence wondering whether your next car purchase should be an electric vehicle or an EV, stay tuned. I've been debating to buy or not to buy an electric car for the last 2 years, and it's time to get some straight answers. In this episode of Let's Get Real, we are going to cut through the noise and opinions of multiple influencers to answer some of the most important questions we undecided humans have. Number one, are EVs more expensive or cheaper? When you add the higher upfront price to the lower running cost, how does the math really stack up? Second question, are EVs only good for city commutes or can I trust them for long drives too? Before I buy, do I need to be sure if I can install a charger at home or can I depend on public charging? So that's my other question. Now there's another fourth question. How different is the driving experience of an EV? Does it genuinely feel better than driving an ICE petrol diesel car? And finally, am I truly helping the environment because the charging electricity is still generated by coal-based thermal plants and EV batteries eventually do land up in the landfills? I've got India's top experts with me to give us some clear answers. Let me welcome Dr. O.P. Agarwal. He's a retired IAS officer and architect of India's National Urban Transport Policy. Dr. Agarwal brings with him 30 years of expertise, including serving as the World Bank's Global Urban Transport Advisor. Also joining me is Hormaz Sorabji. Now, all of you who are auto fans, I'm sure have watched him, heard him and seen him. He's the editor of Autocar India and one of the most influential and insightful auto voices in the country. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and let's dive in straight. Dr. Agarwal, should we even switch to EVs? Because the big confusion on everyone's mind is that yes, the tailpipe emissions in an electric car definitely go to zero. But EVs are charged on thermal or coal-generated electricity. So how much are we really helping the planet on reducing carbon emissions?
So this is actually quite a big question that is being asked around. And there are a lot of studies which are showing that, some studies which show that CO2 emissions do come down despite the coal-based plants. Some studies show that they don't. But my response would be that, we are in India moving towards renewables. We are moving towards solar. So more and more of our electricity is going to be coming from cleaner sources than from coal. That's why I think the shift to electric vehicles is a good idea, despite what our power sources are coming from. But what is more important is not just CO2 emissions. They contribute hugely to local air pollution. All of us are talking about local air pollution being terrible. And this is one reason why electric vehicles are a big boon when it comes to cutting down on local air pollution. So the shift, I think, needs to happen.
All right, so let's move on to economic viability now and the math of it. Hormaz, when it comes to EV ownership, is there a simple rule of thumb to judge if it makes economic sense? So for example, I look at the new Creta EV versus the petrol version. There's about a 5 lakh difference ex-showroom. But with central and state subsidies plus road tax and registration discounts that various states give, the gap actually narrows. Operationally, EVs are much cheaper. Owners of EVs say that running their petrol car costs them 8 to 9 rupees per kilometer, while an EV can be as low as 1 rupee per kilometer. Is there a clear metric that buyers should go by?
Yeah, well, before I answer this question, I'd just like to dial back to what the panelists said on pollution. Couldn't agree more. To mitigate local pollution, EVs are the only way. And even on this whole carbon dioxide debate, I think even that's settled. I mean, it's fair to say that an EV, even powered by the dirtiest energy source, is still cleaner than an ICE engine, purely on the efficiency of the motor, which is far more than the ICE engine. So I think, we need to understand that for planet Earth, for local pollution, EVs are the way to go. There's no debate about that. But obviously, customers aren't so worried about planet Earth, more worried about their wallet. They want to save that more than a big blue planet. And I think looking at the economics, while I agree, there's this whole thing on break even and all, there's one factor which has thrown a spanner in the works, and that is resale value. The resale value, as we are seeing these cars now approach the latest generation, which started with the Nexon EV in 2020, they're coming up to 5 years. The resale value is terrible. Let's not, get away from that. And that is, causing a lot of hesitation. So I think, the whole life cycle ownership, and then finally when you sell the car, it may not add up as much as we'd like. But I think what we need to look at, and I think what a lot of people are looking at, is not just the economics, it is the appeal of an EV. Today, they are in the city the best cars to drive. They're the best automatics, for example. I mean, today an Nexon EV is a far better automatic than even a Mercedes S Class, just by the nature of the way it drives. It's smooth, instant torque, linearity. It just is so super easy to drive. Once someone drives an EV, they are very hooked. It's very difficult for them then to go back to an ICE, purely from the driving point of view.
Dr. Agarwal, what's your view on economic viability of EVs?
The capital cost is not a delta above the petrol vehicle. It is more than a delta. But as you very rightly said, the operating costs are much lower. Now, typically in a situation where the capital cost or the first time cost is high, but your operating costs are lower, you gain based on how much you use the vehicle. So typically vehicles that run longer distances give you a bigger saving if they are electric compared to vehicles that run shorter distances. Some calculations that we had done about 5 or 6 years ago showed a kind of a break-even distance of 70 kilometers a day. But that was about 5 years ago. I think that number has come down significantly. But ideally, the first thing one would try to do is get taxis and auto rickshaws moving to electric more than personal vehicles moving to electric or corporate vehicles moving to electric. These are vehicles that move longer distances in a day. So, in a nutshell, I think the move to electric needs to happen. Because of the economics, slightly longer distance users are better placed to shift than people who use it for very little in a day.
Okay. My next question, Hormaz, is on the charging infrastructure. Now, in most cities, RWAs resist common chargers in gated societies, and many homes don't even have separate lines or enough sanctioned load by their distribution company. Public charging, again, multiple views, that is very patchy in cities and especially on highways.
There's another point I'd like to make, and that is home charging. Now, this to me is a make or break for many. Today, if you don't have home charging, to be honest, public charging can be a nightmare. But if you have home charging, it's even more convenient than an ICE vehicle, for the simple reason your petrol pump is at home. You don't need to go to a fuel station and queue up at all. You can just charge at home in the evening. So the convenience factor is just tremendous if you have home charging. So I think, looking at the economics, honestly, I think there can be debates on that. And I think the resale value, as I said, has put a spanner in the work. But the appeal of an electric car as a city commuter, as an urban commuter, is absolutely fantastic. I think for me, the biggest hurdle right now is access to easy, convenient, and reliable charging.
Dr. Agarwal, this lack of charging infrastructure, isn't that the real bottleneck for EV adoption and for fence sitters like me? And what can be done?
So that's true. I mean, that is one area which is still evolving. Public charging stations are still evolving. On highways, I can only say that, distances, I've been traveling quite often from Roorkee to Delhi. And typically it's an electric vehicle that gets me. And there's no problem for that kind of a distance. If you have to go from Delhi to Chandigarh, there may be a bit of a range anxiety. But today you are getting cars which can go about 200, 300 kilometers very comfortably. There's no problem in that. If you're going longer distances, then yes, you do need public charging. But I would say at least places like 160 kilometers, 150 kilometers away, I don't think that's a problem today. But what is also emerging, yet to emerge fully, but what is also emerging is this concept of swapping batteries. So what you can do with swapping is you go to a swapping station, you give up your battery, they give you a new battery fully charged. This can happen in a few minutes, like filling in petrol. And then with the new battery, you carry on. You don't have to wait for 2 hours or 3 hours to charge that car, or even 1 hour or half an hour if you have to do fast charging. But I think that is still evolving. That's a space that is still evolving. It will come fairly soon. But today, that is, charging is really an issue which is sort of constraining in some way. Even within cities, many charging stations have been set up. But my own feeling is they've not been set up after a good analysis of which are the locations where people would travel to charge, or which is the place where they are happy to charge. and whether those locations have land available for charging stations to be established. I think that is one area that needs a little more study and a little more analysis.
Hormaz, you agree that with charging infrastructure still a bottleneck, is best to switch to an EV only if you're using it within the city?
Yeah, that's right. So clearly, as I'm talking about as urban use, say the EVs right now, as I said, urban phenomenon. So just to give you an estimate, I think today just about 12% of car owners have assigned parking, which means a dedicated parking slot. Forget about then even getting a plug over there. That's a separate issue. So it is a big challenge. The RWAs also create a lot of issues. I think there should be a petition on a right to charge. Everyone needs to have that. I think by law there should be, you have a right to charge and they can't block you on that. So there is definitely an issue. And I think, obviously then you are reliant on public charging. Public charging, as we know, is still a hit and miss. They're not reliable. You have to download apps. It's complicated. The locations are not good, all for the aforementioned. But I've just felt, I don't know why no one does it, and I think this would be something which the oil companies could do very much, is to have a charging point where you refuel. Obviously, it has to be selected where there's a mall or let's say a eating place, so a food court. You can do it over there, and instead of fiddling with apps, why not have an attendant just turn up to you, and just say, sir, kitna kilowatt chahiye, either it's 30 kilowatts or 60 kilowatts. You plug it in, pay by credit card like you would do with fuel. That would just take the pain out of charging so much. Because don't forget, as Indians, we are not used to filling fuel ourselves. We don't do it. When you go abroad, you have to get out of the car, fill the fuel yourself, go inside, pay, and come out. Here, you're asking them from not filling fuel themselves to actually fiddling with apps, plugging it in. These apps take long to activate. It's just cumbersome, doesn't give you the confidence. So I think the oil marketing companies, they have a huge opportunity, to kind of make recharging or charging as painless or almost as painless as refueling. And obviously, it'll take time, but you've got someone doing it for you, you get far more confidence.
Let's also tackle the sustainability factor of EV batteries. I mean, we debate whether they're causing more harm to the planet than good. What's your view? Are they going to end up in the landfills at end of life?
Yeah, no, that definitely is really the concern with EVs. Very clearly, I think recyclability of the batteries is a problem, and they do go into landfills. You can have second life use for the batteries, and go on that way. But at the end, there's no getting away from the fact that it's fair to say that EVs at some point. They may clean up the air, but they might pollute the earth. And now it's a between the devil and the deep blue sea in that sense. That's why you can't ignore other technologies. You have other ways of taking out carbon from the atmosphere. And don't forget, today why we're doing all this, because CO2 is public enemy number one. It's become an existential issue for planet Earth going forward for the next decades because of global warming. We see it, we feel it. We've seen the crazy weather we've been having in our lives, in our cities. So there's no getting away from that. We are right in the thick of it. So I think obviously that you have to look at alternative technologies, but I think the one big challenge is the recyclability, because that's not easy. But there are technologies which are going to be looking at this, and there will be solutions found.
What about servicing EVs, Hormaz? Are they easy to service with enough trained technicians?
So I think it's quite interesting, because I think the issue with EVs really is they're quite reliable because fewer moving parts. Motors are generally reliable. You don't have a massive complex combustion engine working. But I think the challenge is software. And I think a lot of EV manufacturers don't have the software development skills to transition from ICE to EVs. I mean, getting people who know the software on cars, that's absolutely gold today. Very difficult to find. That's why a lot of automakers are facing serious challenges of glitches, unreliability from in their EVs right now, which is all software related. I think this is a transition. You'll have to go through this pain, but eventually, technically, once you get your software sorted and you understand it, EVs are more reliable than ICE cars.
Also, quickly give me your view on the range. The newer versions are coming out with better and better range, of course, driving range. Are we actually insisting too much that buy an EV only if you're going to use it for shorter distances and within the city limits?
To be honest, it's difficult. I would not advise someone to buy an EV who wants to do long distance trips. You can do it, but it's a pain. We've done it enough. We've driven a Porsche from Kashmir to Kanyakumari some years back. We know what we felt. We constantly do these road trips in EVs. You manage with the apps and everything, but we are quite hardcore into it. But as a normal family going out, it's difficult, and with the current charging infrastructure, it's not advisable. So I think that is the challenge. And I think the ranges are increasing. You're getting more and more range. So I think the way I would look at it, if your drive is, let's say, Mumbai, Pune and back, there are EVs which will do that, get you home and back on one charge, and you're sorted. Or if you're going to a hill station, Mahabaleshwar, there's one EV point there where, you're not in a rush to come back, you're sorted. So it's all about where you want to go, how you want to go, the range of the vehicle. The range of the vehicles is increasing. But to be honest, it still is not enough to make it a comfortable long distance cruiser.
Thank you, gentlemen, for giving many of us the much needed clarity on whether to buy or not to buy an electric car. I'm going to wrap out by saying yes. A switch to EV is absolutely a go-ahead if you're concerned about your city-level air pollution and want to do your bit. Now, if you're driving also within mostly city limits or short drives outside, again, it's a yes. With EV prices falling year on year, plus subsidies and registration discounts, and a much lower running cost, break-even is not hard to achieve. Hormaz also pointed out the experience of driving an EV is far superior. They are the best automatics available today. So if you have a charging installation option available at home or at your workplace, switching for a city ride to an EV makes absolutely good sense. You will make that much needed difference to your air pollution. But yes, be aware of the potential gaps and then take that decision. Resale value of EVs is a big question mark. And if you can't install a charger at home or your society or at your workplace also don't have charging facilities, then depending on public infrastructure is kind of dicey. That's what both the experts said. In the years to come, both city and highway charging options will get better. After all, as a country, we have a commitment to meet the target of 30% all vehicles to be electric by 2030. My personal take, there is absolutely no reason why every state government cannot make it mandatory for upcoming and existing residential societies to provide EV fast charging stations or points. This is an easy inclusion in the building bylaws, and this single change can have an outsized impact on faster EV adoption for people like me who are sitting on the fence. Thank you so much for watching.